Ron Rabou is a professional public speaker, and that's one reason I'm doing the introductions. He's from Alvin, which is kind of in the middle of the other locations. Ron owns and operates Rabou Farms. I'm saying it correctly, right?
You're right. Yeah, did good.
I saw a video where
Get an A+.
saw a video where the guy mispronounced it. It's a certified organic operation, and Ron raises wheat, Proso Millet, Garbanzo beans, lentils, yellow peas, and he is this year or last year one of Farm Journal Media's 3 nationwide finalists for top producer of the year nationwide. So that's a great honor, and I'm glad to have him here. And Ron speaks nationwide on various topics, including leadership and agriculture. Ron was one of our producer talks 2 years ago.
I think so. Yep.
And yeah, it was excellent talk. So I put this up here, and I don't know if you guys, this is from the Western Regional Climate Center. It says Alvin gets almost 19 inches of rain as a 30-year average, 81 to 2010. Sydney gets about 17. Does that sound right to you guys?
I think we get about 12. That's what it feels like.
19 sounds like the tropics. Hereford gets about 15, and then Slater comes out the leader with 13.
That's on the good year.
Right.
Yeah,
Effective rainfall.
yeah, that's the thing. Let's see. Well, I have some more information. These are the rainfall distribution over the years, so January to December, so you can see summer rain really drives the system, but summer rain is super variable and hit and miss in both in duration and just the amount that falls.
And when it comes frozen.
Yeah. Sometimes it comes as big, hard falls. But you can see that, sort of similar patterns in all 4 of those areas. I think I have, oh no, I didn't. All right, well, I had been looking at the variability, so I must have had a different version. But the variability for these is all around 20%. So that means a normal year in Hereford, for instance, could be anywhere from, like 12 inches to 18 inches. So it's almost unpredictable, right? And we were talking about this last night over beers, but that's why fallow worked for so long. You could get some predictability out of it, even if, the stability was less than you might get with other methods in a good year. You get, even in bad years, you get some yield. But fallow has the downside of, wheat fallow of degrading the soil. And we really see that when we compare long-term straight wheat fallow with long-term diversified rotations in no-till. So I'm gonna the first thing I'm gonna ask, and then we can kind of open up the discussion, is I just like, maybe Ron, you can start. Just what's your tillage rotation? So what's your rotation, but tell us mostly about how the tillage fits into that rotation. We'll have you guys do that.
It's a trick question, because it depends. I mean, we all know, right? We all farm, and so it depends on what the year is like, and it depends on what we think the rains are going to be. I think that sometimes when you look at charts for rain, I think it's a little bit confusing, because what I tell most people when I travel and speak is that, if we get 16 inches of rain in a year, for an example, that a lot of that comes in the form of snow or something from October through April. But the key is how much do we get in the time in which we need it? And it doesn't always necessarily mean how much do we get, but when we get it. So the timeliness of those rains is more important than the actual amount a lot of times. And so for us, what we've done with regard to the issue of tillage is I'm kind of a believer that we need to make sure that we have as many tools in our toolbox as possible. And so I know that as farmers, it's really tough to justify the expense in equipment a lot of times, but I think that sometimes we can cheat ourselves if we're not giving ourselves every asset possible to have at our disposal. And so for us, we use everything from a plow all the way to vertical till equipment. So we have sweeps that vary from 4 inches all the way up to 4 feet. So we have rolling baskets, we have discs, we have disc rippers, we have mulch tillers, we have plows, we have sweep or blade machines, we have vertical till machines. And so we use those obviously in a variety of circumstances. And so I think in an organic application that, and I don't know what these guys, what their opinion is, but I think that a plow is necessary in this part of the country, but not every single year. So I think that it's important to do because it helps control things like cheatgrass. It helps to control other plants that we can't necessarily control any other way. But if we're doing it every single year, I think we're also doing ourselves a disfavor. Like I don't think that we're that we are helping our soil structure. And so we raise such a variety of spring crops is for a couple of different reasons. So one is that I won't even raise a spring crop unless I have a contract for it. So if I know that there's profitability in a particular crop, then I'll pursue that crop, and we do discovery. So a lot of times we'll, for example, this year was the 3rd year in a row that we've raised garbanzos and lentils. The first year with both of those crops was an absolute utter failure. And if I were to tell myself, you know, looking at the first year, should I ever do this again? I would have said absolutely not, because it's a stupid idea, and I lost, you know, a lot of money on those acres. But fortunately, we didn't try a lot of acres. And so, so we're trying a lot of different plants, and by trying a lot of different plants, and we're breaking up a lot of those cycles for weeds, okay, and for pests. But what we're also doing is we're providing different opportunities to develop different soil structure to figure out what works. Okay, this year we tried yellow field peas. We tried yellow field peas in the sense that we some of them got hailed out, some of them we took all the way to harvest. Some of them we took the stubble where we raised those peas, and we went in and we cut those fields out, and then we went in and planted wheat directly behind those. And I have no idea how that'll work, but we'll find out this next year. And if it doesn't work, we'll probably try it again, because I don't think we can just give ourselves 1 year and say, okay, that didn't work. And so some of that we will go from peas to fallow, and that ground right there we'll probably use, like this year, or last year we used a plow a lot because of the, you know, I mean, it's you get a lot of moisture in the spring, sometimes you're limited to what you can do. And all of a sudden you have green stuff that's this tall, your only option is a plow. I mean, how are you going to destroy that stuff and break it down reasonably enough to get it under control? And so you have to do a plow. So this year we plan to go in earlier. We're going to use our sweep machines, and we're going to keep as much residue on the surface that we possibly can. Because one of the problems that we've run into the last couple of years is we don't seem to get any rain in the month of July and August and September. And so by the time we plant our wheat, get those crazy things. So by the time we go to plant our wheat in you know, the end of August, beginning of September, it's, you know, like planting in a big field of powdered sugar. And so we want to try to keep as much of that structure in the soil as close to the surface as possible. We've used mulch tillers before. We've used our blade machines before, and we know for sure that over the course of the season, we can keep more residue on the top, okay, which allows a firmer planting bed, which allows our, because we're not going as deep with our tillage, our moisture is also closer to the surface, and we can get our wheat crop to pop a little bit better. And so I guess to answer the question, I mean, it's just a really general question. We all are going to have different ideas and different opinions on what we should do, how we should do it, when we should do it. But I think the main thing for us is having as large of an arsenal of tillage tools as possible, with always keeping in mind soil structure, moisture conservation, and you know, other factors, obviously, like we don't really have to worry about water erosion, right? But wind erosion. So, but we do have to worry about water erosion. Anyway.
So, wait, just let me ask, are all you guys have a moldboard plow?
Yes.
So you keep greased? No, you don't.
We do not have a moldboard plow. I've wanted it a few times.
Okay,
It's not one of the pieces of equipment that is high enough on the priority list to go out and buy yet.
okay, well, you might be looking at a precipitation gradient. Go ahead, Corey.
Just kind of reiterate what Ron said, as far as tillage practices, we try to plow almost every year, something. Usually for the plowing is to control our ride problem. We've got a pretty bad ride problem here around the Burns area. So plowing it kind of knocks those seeds over, and we're just trying some different experiments now with plowing one year and maybe just chiseling the next year. But kind of the same way as Ron does. We farm when we have to. If there's no rain, there's no weeds growing, there's no reason to farm. It's usually wait till the weeds start growing. We're gonna do it. We do it anywhere from 4 to 7 times, kind of just depending on the weather patterns for the year. Every year is different. If you think you've got it figured out, the next year will tell you you're completely wrong. No matter what you try, everything's a trial and error. So we're always trying something different every year.
That's good.
I've gotten more into the spring crops myself. We used to do wheat fallow. I grew up, my parents did wheat fallow. But the ground has become pretty wore out. And to be able to organically kind of get nitrogen and everything back up to level, I'm running some spring crops, which is either millet. Been trying different millets. I've tried garbanzos. It didn't go well for me either. Tried some oats, but my main thing is, especially with my livestock now, is hay millet. That way I can get some crop or feed for my cattle at the same time and break up the cycle. Every time you're putting in a spring crop to a fall crop, you're kind of breaking those cycles that every weed knows how to grow and know how to prosper. And if you're a wheat fallow, every weed knows it and they'll start figuring it out. So you kind of got to break those cycles, and a lot of trial and error. Lots of trial and error.
So what I'm hearing from the first two is that you don't have a set. You don't just go out and hook up the plow and go.
We usually know about a day or two before you're going to do it, what you're going to do.
Okay. Well, they call it flex. If it's crops you're changing, they call it flex cropping. It's sort of like flex tillage.
Flex tillage, that's right.
I think that too, that, if you use a plow all the time, obviously you're going to develop hardpan. So which is why we have gone to mulch tillers and disc rippers, because we can actually get those shanks, 18 inches below the surface. And so we can break up a lot of that hardpan. And so I think if you're doing something different every year, it kind of helps with the soil.
Yes.
And what the opportunities are. If you're raising different crops, you have different root structures that are growing in the ground and helping out with that too.
We are almost strictly moldboard plow on the organic area. I've experimented with everything in the 80s. I sold all the plows. There's no-till on one farm for 5 years and could not get the seed in the ground. So I quit that. And then in the 90s, I went back to the moldboard plow, and then I went to organic in about 2000. Basically all my acres and everything was moldboard plowed. And then we work it 4, maybe 5 times during the summer. We have since then reduced our organic acreage. We're probably a third of what we used to be, actually less than that on the organic side. The no-till is conventional ground, and I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to do that. Conventional wheat at 350, stockage does not work, obviously. But I'm trying with the no-till, trying with some fertilizer programs, working through that. Not sure where we're going with that. I'm finding a lot of it's grass. And then hopefully in a few years, when things get cleaned up, bindweed, Canadian thistle and that, maybe we can go back to organic ground there. I've tried ripping because I thought I had a hard pan, didn't see any advantage. Tried several things, and I'm obviously much older than most of you in the room. And so I've seen it go circle after circle. And I always come back to the mold myrtle. But we have a lot less moisture, and so we have to do everything we can to conserve the moisture. Like the rest of you, after we plow it, we try and plow it early. The one thing is to try and control the sawfly. And that's a real problem on the no-till. The plowed ground, not so bad. And then we look at it depending on the moisture. If we have some rain to break down the clods, we'll probably just field cultivate it and then maybe rod it. So if we don't have, we may disc it early. In fact, we're thinking we'll probably start disking and packing shortly after we plow, just to get the ground sealed off and get it back into condition, where we can save water and moisture. So I've gone back, we started going back to what we were doing for that 60s, what my father was doing. We'll probably disc and pack it, and then we'll field cultivate it, and then we'll go back to using the water.
Okay. And that's on organic.
That's on the organic.
Okay.
Yeah, on the no-till, and that's where the livestock is being used, is on the no-till right now. We're experimenting with cover crops. I haven't done that long enough to know how successful that is, but it is providing livestock feed, and it is reducing some of the risk.
Mm-hmm. So there's more to the story than tree sale as far as the distribution of these guys' farms. There's a difference in growing breed days. There's a difference in land, and there's a difference in the NRCS classification of major land resource area. If you look at the northern high plains, a lot of this area is in it, but there's a finger, the Great Plains, that comes like this and includes Alvin, and it's just better growing conditions than either north or south.
But we farm up by Gregor, and it's
You farm with
it's
good
different.
It's different, yeah.
You're 8 miles south.
Man, yeah.
I
We're north where you are. I can imagine it's even more intense because it's. Yeah, I mean the NRCS won't even make you. I mean, I think that our widest strip is like 150 feet,
And that's
it's like we make like 2 passes where they go to the next field and then we. go
There's
to
an
the next
answer to
field.
your question too. We do follow NRCS rules, and they come up with some.
Oh, yeah.
They come up with what they think you should have for the size of your fields and everything. You got to comply by it.
If you're right.
If you want crop insurance, yep.
yes, our strips are 145 feet wide. I have gone down to 110. You just can't use the big equipment in there.
And you know, when you're out there in Slater Bench and Alvin area, you know it's different. But I wrote a paper where I had groups of fields here and groups of fields here, and I said, you know, these are different areas, and the reviewers didn't see the difference in the numbers, you know. So that's why I really had to delve into like the growing degree days and just finding the differences. Although, you know, these numbers are different than the ones that were there five or 6 years ago when I did that. Go ahead.
After living in the 3 before me, having 1,000 feet of elevation on everybody and another week of growing season has really changed the way we do things differently. We're 100% wheat and millet fallow rotation on the organic. Pretty much the same on the conventional, other than I have played with canola, amaranth, a little bit of flax, safflower, some sunflowers. On the conventional side, think of something next month. We primarily use a 26-inch sweep machine, basically from the first pass in the spring, 3-4 times, all the way until the last pass before we plant in the fall. I have a couple 1600 John Deere chisels that I have set up in interesting ways when we have problems. I've got 4-inch wide twisted chisel points on some, with 36-inch sweeps on the back row. It's a 41-foot wide plow at that point. And then we go all the way to a 53-foot cultivator with 2-inch points that when I want to cover acres in a hurry. So We have a disc when we have to.
So, another question, are there any questions, follow-up questions from the, yeah, Mike?
On the plowing, is there like a certain cutoff date in spring where, and I've never plowed, so this is purely for my own information of, is there a certain cutoff date where with erosion you get to this hemisphere? If that's the first time you plow, or can you plow all summer long without worrying about it too much? Or what is it?
No.
Tell
No,
me.
in fact, you don't, in my opinion, I don't think you want to plow even in front of like planting a spring crop. You're just gonna lose everything, because what you're doing is you're turning the soil over, it's drying out. I mean, so think about it. I mean, you're turning it dark, so it's getting hotter, it's drying out quicker, and then you're depending on those summer rains to bring that moisture profile back to the surface so you can be able to plant. So the later you do it, obviously, the worse off you're gonna be, because you want to really do it as early as possible to ensure that you're trapping as much of that excess moisture that comes after plowing.
Yeah,
So you get that done. I'm sorry.
Wheat needs a firm seed bed.
Sure.
Plow way late.
Sure, everything really needs a fairly firm seed. I mean, it's important to make sure that, that you're planting the appropriate
In
bed.
plowed ground, you've got to have moisture after you plow it. And the later you are, the less moisture is going back in that plowed ground, and the less moisture you're going to have time back. I've seen people try into June, not a bit of moisture, whole rest of the year, whole next 2 years.
Mhm.
And so when's the ideal time of year that you guys feel comfortable plowing?
Well, April 15th is when we can start,
Yeah.
and then for about a month. And that's pushing it towards the end.
But you're doing it later, Dave.
Yeah, we can plow later. We'd like to be done by the 1st of June. If conditions are wet, we will go into June. Prefer not to do that. And we have plowed for spring crop. Our neighbors can plow for spring crop. And sometimes plow it in good enough condition, they just go straight back to the drill.
No, guys down in June, he plows it and then instantly chisels it and tries to get that moisture, everything kind of moving again, and waiting for that one more rain before he plant oats.
Yeah, another farmer I work with, Dennis Baker, he has a very set schedule of tillage. He plows and then it's like it has to recover from plowing and chisels, but he wants it to settle back down by planting time. So, and he's in the southern, he's a little closer to Chugwater. Yeah.
I'm interested in what drills you use, those casings, ridges.
Sure.
Is 10 inch, 12 inch?
Used to be 12 inch, and in organic, I find that closer your drill rows are together, the less chance you have weeds. So I've actually gone down to a 9 inch hoe drill. We get a lot of wind too, so anytime you can get any kind of cover over that crop is good.
Roughness.
Yeah, they say any roughness you have, any kind of what am I looking for? Ridge you have, the wind will go up over that amount of time. So we try to get a little bit of ridge. It keeps it from blowing too.
We use, we have a variety of drills. I think 10 inch is really a great spacing, but we plant most all of our wheat with a 12 inch spacing. We have a 60-foot air seeder, and then we have a 50-foot hoe drill. Both of those are set at 12 inch spacing with split packer wheels. And then we have a 10 inch spacing drill that has solid packer wheels. That's a 40. And then all of our spring crops we do with a double disc drill, and that is at 7.5 inches. So when we're talking our garbanzos, lentils, peas, Proso Millet, it all gets put in with a double disc drill and 7.5 inch spacing.
Our drill is an air seeder, 10 inch. I prefer it to be 12 inch. Don't want to spend the money to do it. We also have a 7 inch spacing on a double disc drill. Conditions are right in the spring, we use that. And then as a backup, we have a hoe drill that's 12 inch.
For our spring crops, most of the time we're using 7.5 inch double disc case drill. And then all of our wheat gets planted with our 10 inch hoe drill. We're far enough down the hill. A lot of guys in my area like 7.5 inch across the board. I think it's a little tight on wheat personally, but to each their own.
You mentioned the strips. Are there other conservation practices that you're using NRCS for driven conservation practices?
Well, I think that when it comes to dealing with the NRCS and the FSA, I think that communication is key. I think a lot of guys just say, well, I'm going to do whatever I want and still give me my subsidy. It's not the way it works, right? And so, but I think there are extenuating circumstances where, for example, you know, we'll have a hailstorm that'll come through and wipe out a wheat crop. Well, what are you going to do? Leave it and let it all go to volunteers so you can get all kinds of disease in it? Or are you going to tear it out? Well, if you get that hailstorm and it's too late, you're going to tear it out and you're going to have a big block of fallow. It's just, what other option do you have? And so then you have to communicate with the NRCS and say, look, it's the reason that this isn't a big block is because we had a hailstorm come through. It'll be stripped out, but it's going to take another year for us to get it stripped back out again. And so I think communication is key when it comes to that. I don't think that, I mean, obviously with the responses that you're hearing and what you see up on the screen, and you all have your own operations, that I don't think that there's any cookie cutter one size fits all plan. You know, I think that we can all search for answers and we try to all do what's best or what we think is best for each of our own individual operations. But that changes based on the year. It changes based on what the markets are. It changes based on what the weather is. It changes on, you know, maybe you have that hailstorm come through, or maybe you get a lot of early rain and you decide you want to plant more spring crop and less wheat, or you want to double back on wheat on something. So it really, I think you just have to be flexible. But keep in mind that, you know, your certifiers and your, you know, compliance agencies like FSA and NRCS need to be communicated with. And I think that that really is a big key and something that all of us, especially as farmers, probably aren't that great at. And we can definitely improve that side.
And take pictures.
Good point. Absolutely.
Everybody carries one of these with them. My certifier screams and hollers if I don't have lots of pictures for them. So it's the most valuable tool any of us carry. It's also the leash.
Do you guys have anything?
We've have to be flexible. 2 years ago, we basically didn't get our wheat crop out. And so come spring, we wanted to plant barley because I thought I had a market for that. I did have a market for that. But crop insurance wouldn't release it till the 15th of April. A little late for barley, but I went ahead and did it. Waited until the 15th, planted the barley, and it was market. But I knew I had a market for barley instead of oats. Using the oats, we utilize our own livestock operation. Sometimes if we have a failure in it's later, we'll plant millet and they have our own.
There's no way you could have planted that earlier? I mean, it seemed like you should be able to.
They had to look at it 15th of April.
So, Gregor, are there any, and I work with a number of organic farmers on the Slater bench, and I can't think of any, but do you know of any farmers that successfully don't have a plow or plow less than you do?
Not organically. No.
Our former farm manager up at Lingle, we had a quarter section of organic strips on the research station in Lingle. And he had what I thought was a great system, you know, lots of residue on the surface. They don't own a moldboard plow, or they do, it's a small one, and they weren't using it. But when we got to working in those strips, we realized that it was a train wreck. He was just lifting the combine head higher and higher to get over the weeds and the bindweed and everything else. That it's not de facto organic anymore because the weeds. So that made me think that no plow system, was challenged there. And I just wonder if there's anybody doing that, or the other guys too, besides.
We like a disc.
Yeah,
We're a little sandier, a little gravelier, so it's,
okay.
also, if we're gonna plow, I want a spinner plow. If we're gonna throw dirt, I want to be very present in where we're throwing that dirt. We're gonna move 14 inches of dirt one way or another. Let's throw it the way we want.
I see. Well, a plow that flips over, so you
Yes.
don't
It's,
end up with a dead furrow.
No dead.
I don't want a dead throw in the middle of the field, and if I'm gonna move dirt, I want to move it back up. Because some of my ground feels like we're doing it. So,
Are there other organic farmers that you guys know of in your areas that are not, turn their plow into a mailbox or something?
Good. My family down south doesn't use a plow anymore, but they're starting to get hard pan and stuff too, and more weeds.
So they may have to come up and
Yeah.
borrow your plow.
Yep.
Most everyone is gonna have a plow, I think. And the stuff that we farm in Chugwater, I mean, we bring plows up there, because it's Chugwater. What are you gonna do, right?
8 years ago or whatever it was, there were plows everywhere. You could buy a plow for $1. You can't find a plow anywhere anymore. So it's
They have a
Is
lot
that
of them,
because of the
that's not
organic?
true, they have a lot of them in Minnesota.
in Minnesota. There you go. You go all the way to Minnesota.
I think
Just go pick it up in your truck and wheel it back.
They don't, okay,
John
so,
Deere stopped making plows.
yeah,
You
now
can't
they
find
regret
John
it.
Deere.
Is that driven by the transition to organic?
that, the failure of Kim Fallow.
Yeah, I think it's driven a lot by, everyone's so worried about what the carbon footprint is. A plow is, because you're gonna have to till a lot. I've had people that, I had a guy last week, 2 days ago in Washington tell me, he's like, yeah, I'm glad that organic crop that you're raising has such a reduced carbon footprint. Because Chem Fallow is better, of course, right? So,
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
my argument always is, do what works for you. Right? I mean, if organic does not work for you.
I mean, the resurgence plowing though, is that related to the trend?
Oh, the resurgence of plowing, I'd say.
Popularity.
It's regional, yeah.
Put some of that and some of the Kim fallows.
Because, what's the chem fallow problem? Is it?
All these
Just
weeds are
these
become susceptible to
resistant
everything.
It's, every winter, my family does a tillage point sale. And I've had people come back out of the woodwork that went completely no-till 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. Haven't heard from them since until 1st of June going, are you guys still in business? There's too many weeds.
I was just gonna ask you guys if you think the situation would be any different if it was land that hadn't been in somebody's hands for years. That Dr. Norton in this one said something about about it taking quite a while for the lands to return to its pre-worked state.
A pre-disturbance state?
Yeah.
I'm
So,
not sure that's
like,
possible.
So any lands that we've held for a long time that we've been working for many years in a row, like it would take maybe a decade or longer for it to return to that.
Well, we have that situation though, and I think you guys, a lot of farmers have come out of CRP for 15, 20 years. And I've looked at those soils and the carbon levels are almost back to,
In a no-till situation,
Compared to-
like they haven't been tilled?
CRP.
compared to prairie.
Okay.
CRP grass is almost recovered, even if it's just brome grass, 15 or 20 years, organic carbon levels are close to the comparable prairie nearby.
Well, like, I guess what I'm getting at is if you start with that land, like if you start with a piece of land that's not under anybody's hand,
Oh,
and-
break out the prairie?
Well, not like any of us want to consume more land than we have to, but like if you had, theoretically, if you had that piece of land that hadn't been worked yet,
Well, that, I guess,
do we think that no-tilling would be a good way to like approach that if it's already healthy soil or?
Well, I guess maybe I can twist it to something you guys might be able to answer. Is it different when you break out long-term CRP?
Are you talking like no-till organically?
Can you treat it differently?
I've torn out some CRP over the last few years, and wherever you are, weeds show up. They're everywhere. So the answer probably not.
So you treat it pretty much the same.
Yes, you do have less weeds, and you have less of some of the worst noxious weeds, like stuff I'm tearing out doesn't have any rye. What others that have been, but kochia and all that, it's everywhere.
That a weed's gonna fill its niche. If you've got an open niche in the field, monocrops, we do. We've got a lot of them. We're gonna have weeds, some of which we accept, some of which I go walk. A lot.
Now, on breaking CRP, we don't plow that. We just.
Correct, and I don't either.
Oh,
It's in good enough shape. I don't worry about plowing it yet.
What do you do?
That's
Just
all
broadcast?
just a couple of passes with a disc or what?
Disc.
Multiple passes.
Oh, yeah.
Will you do those first passes in the fall and then plant next spring, or when you do that first initial break is the time in the spring?
Well, it depends on crop insurance wise. You gotta tear it out in the fall by November 30th if you want certain crop insurance.
Don't tell them. You can lightly disc it in the fall. You don't want to
Make
blow.
tracks.
That's fine,
Yes.
right. That'd be nice.
You want to make tracks.
And then are you growing spring crops after, or are you then leaving it the whole next year and planting in the fall?
I will tell you that every bit of CRP that we've ever broken out, will, because of, whatever crop insurance says to do, and whatever the, FSA allows us to do, but we'll disc it, plow it, disc it, and then it's ready to go. So we take a different approach to
I've
that.
tried spring crops on it once.
Yeah, we've
coming
never
out,
put spring
and
crops
it
in it
didn't do
coming out.
well. It's the
not
ground is
moisture.
too rich or something.
It would be continuous crop then too.
And yes.
But that's what would give you near the coverage.
When you guys
Something you
plant
want to plant weed into.
CRP or grass, are you guys doing any fertility management at that point? Because there's a pile of carbon that's becoming free that's gonna chew up a lot of your free nitrogen when that happens. We haven't broke grass in 15 years, and that was 5 acres to make a field square.
I did, and the stuff I did.
We've just done soil samples,
Mhm.
and we monitor that just from year to year to see where we're at and to see what impact the spring crops are having, what we do. Someone else had a question too.
Well, I come from Southwest Nebraska, and one of the things we've been thinking about is putting some of our property into perennial grass for like 4 years to graze it, just to improve the soil health, and I'm wondering if that's a feasible process. Again, where you would use intensive grazing to get your good return on the grazing part while it's in that period. But I guess I'm wondering is any loss of termination of the grass before you make that work, or grass is just not nearly profitable?
What would your intention be after grass for 4 years? Go back out and farm again?
Yeah, because you want the soil health.
There's a lot of guys that are doing that in different states, but instead of doing grass, they're doing alfalfa. And they're putting alfalfa into it, and then if you let it sit for, 2, 3, 4 years, and then when you pull it out, it produces really well.
Yes.
And then you can produce on it for 4 or 5 years, and then turn it back into alfalfa again.
It's kind of a variation of the sugar beet rotation that's kind of taken over in the Great Basin, the basin, the Bighorn Basin. With seed alfalfa for 2, 3 years, and then sugar beets, barley, and then some very, very long rotations with seed alfalfa. And it really, I've looked at soils in those situations, really improved compared with beet barley rotation. I think long rotations like that with a perennial involved can be a really good option, but that's where livestock come in to make it work.
In your protein, wheat crop should be reasonable.
Yeah, following
Following a couple of years of alfalfa.
But an extreme drought, you'll get 0 cuttings. So be prepared for that.
But that's what insurance is for.
Oh.
All right. I think we had a question back here.
I think you guys, we talked a lot about plowing this year, 100% with the reasoning, but where have you incorporated other conservation practices to try to reduce your tillage? Because ultimately, plowing is going to work, but when are we going to get into a situation where economically we're back into like a dust bowl sort of situation? You know, I see a trend going suddenly in my region where everybody's organic, you know. I see a push. I mean, I got producers ringing my doorbell, you know, really interested in it, and we're all plowing and whatnot. Do you know what I mean? Like, have you started to incorporate other?
They mentioned the narrow strips.
Strips the big contributor, helping that out.
Okay, have you guys tried the cover crop thing? Does it work for you?
I tried cover crops about, it was when we were going through that drought about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I tried to tease straight into wheat stubble, and I didn't get a single pea to come up for 2 or 3 years.
Would you be willing to try something that's not just peas? Because peas, to me,
The problem with here is after we usually harvest our wheat, the ground is so dry and hard, you can't even get your finger into the ground.
Here's what it boils down to. It boils down to economics.
Right.
So if you can't make something work economically, it doesn't matter. And so do cover crops work in other parts of the country? Absolutely. Yes. If we had the soil that Iowa does, and we had the moisture patterns that Iowa does, would we do cover crops? Absolutely.
No.
So there's a lot of I think that there's a lot of concern with people who see organic farmers, like the guy I met in Washington a couple of days ago, who was so worried about look at all this tillage that you're doing to make this organic crop. Right, but I know my operation better than anyone does. Corey knows his better than anyone does. Right. And so that's why I think it's important that you have an arsenal of tillage tools. So every year, are we going in and plowing? Absolutely not. Every year, does Corey go in and plow? Absolutely not. But we have about 10 different types of tillage tools on our place, and we'll use those in a variance of different ways throughout the year, whether it's secondary tillage or primary tillage. And so
we're just not really, so like, I'm just trying to get like a feel for where you guys are coming economically from a producer standpoint. So ultimately, you're really just not really even interested in trying it.
Oh, that's not true.
Okay.
That's absolutely not true.
The minute the numbers work for us,
right?
Perfect. Okay.
It will happen, and we'll
Right.
jump on board faster than it.
I think that you have probably 4 people that are sitting here at the table that are willing to try an awful lot.
Yeah, exactly. That's
You know,
why we're here.
I'm probably one of the few in Laramie County that's ever even done, for example, different, no one grows lentils here.
Right.
No one grows garbanzo beans. People are starting to grow peas, but we've been extremely successful with it. And it's done really, really well for us. And it's served I think it served our ground well. It's served, Kelly Downer well. So yeah, I mean, but you have to look at the economics of things, and just because some mandate comes down from NOP, or some mandate comes down from the USDA, or some mandate comes down because some group wants us to try something different, doesn't mean that we're not open-minded to doing it, but it does mean that we are still business people, and we have to look at our businesses as businesses. And if the economics are not there and those economics don't work, we're willing to risk some, but the point is, how much at the end of the day are you willing to risk? And so when I grew garbanzo beans for the first time, I grew 40 acres. I'm not going to plant 1,000 acres of garbanzo beans at $200 an acre. Okay. I'm not going to plant, 1,000 acres of cover crops to see if maybe this will work. But so we absolutely will try different things, but I think that we have a pretty good handle on what actually does work and what actually doesn't. Understanding that there is some flexibility and there is a little bit of variance in there to say, hey, maybe we're having a better year and we can try this practice differently, or we can try, radishes, or we can try alfalfa, or whatever it is on a particular piece of our farm.
So this is gonna segue really well into our next discussion about research needs, I think, because kind of what I'm hearing you say is, show us some practices that work economically and agronomically. And
Sure, you can't stay in business if you can't make money.
That's
Right,
exactly.
so a lot of times we get a thing, I'm obviously NRCS, and I'm asking more just where you guys are at economically, what's your mindset? Is there something NRCS specifically is not providing you guys in a program and something that, like, for instance, we get every single year a CSP come out, hey, what can we add to CSP? Or can we add a separate enhancement for a group? One of them, I was screaming for putting pivots in for CSP. Is there something NRCS could provide to gap that risk for you, from your perspective?
Now, years ago, I did away with the plow
Right?
and tried stubble mulching, trying to keep cover on top. And with the wind we have, I felt like I had more erosion than when I plowed.
Okay.
And all your good stuff is over in the neighbors, huh?
Because your soil's fine. Right.
that's the other thing. I mean, there's a time to, that's part of the timing thing. A plow isn't it that, I used to think it was evil, but I think these guys know how to plow. They know when it's gonna blow. And that's part of the timing thing, right? If you plow too late, it's gonna be powder and it's gonna blow.
There are pieces of ground I won't touch a plow with. There's no way I'll touch a plow with it. Because I know instantly it'll start blowing. As us as farmers too, we get this whole concept. We probably care about the ground more than anybody else in the world because it is our livelihood. It's our whole life. Without it, we're screwed. So that's just.
Anything NRCS could ever do, I would, that we do get asked in the field a lot. If
Sure.
you hear something from your producers, I would.
I think that from my perspective, flexibility. Because a lot of times when the USDA develops programs, they are cookie cutter.
One size
Yeah,
fits.
And it is an absolute one-size-fits-all program. And I will tell you that when you're farming with a 14-inch annual rainfall, that the majority of it falls from October to April, and you're farming at 5,300 feet elevation, everything changes. Everything changes. When you have 93-mile-an-hour wind gusts in the wintertime, that changes everything, right? When you have 70 miles an hour sustained winds for months on end, that changes everything. So they develop programs, and those programs we're supposed to fit within those parameters. And I would like to see a little bit more interaction and engagement from the NRCS to the actual producers to say, hey, sure, I'll come out and look at your land. Let's try this field. I mean, I'll give you some acres if you want to try some things. Absolutely. But there has to be a little bit of, give and take on both sides of the
It
fence.
seems like that's gotta happen at a state level.
Not necessarily, I won't say that. I'll say I had a producer last year that had 6 pivots, 5 of them got hailed out, he had a CSP contract. I live in the same county he did. My car got hailed on too. I understood that. That in a situation where at a soil con, hopefully a good one, I'm out of that contract without any compliance issue. Well, that's not your fault. I mean, that part, like, you're right.
Okay, let's do one more question.
Sorry.
What would each of you like to try?
Good question.
It's a great question.
That is a good question.
In what way? You can't say,
Like,
you
anything.
can't say cookies because.
On your farm operation?
I want to grow some corn in Iowa. That's what I want. What's it like to farm in a real farming environment? What's it like to see the front of the tractor when you're in the cab?
Let me interject one thing about the programs. Truthfully, they are developed for the Corn Belt and they don't work for the redneck on one of our acres. We realize that.
Yep.
We got to have no control.
Yeah, I know.
Sure.
Yep.
I want you guys to an answer to.
I would like to try
this.
him.
I want to know, on your farm, what is your idea of something you would like to see in that field, but you can't do because of this?
Right now, yeah.
Where is your, we'll do that. Cause that's, I mean.
As
my
in
job
planting it or
is
using it?
crazy stuff, so I'm-
Well.
I don't know the answer to that, please.
for me, it's not hemp. I think that, for me, it's not that. I would like to try raising more specialty crops. But the risk is so stinking high for a lot of them, that how much can you afford to do? And just because you do a plot on, 40 acres or 20 acres or whatever it is, doesn't mean it does work if it does, and it doesn't mean it doesn't work if it doesn't, right? Because it's not a proper representation of your entire farm.
And
so,
it's a year.
So I would like to try different crops, and I would like to, I can find the markets for them because I think I'm pretty decent at that. So I can find the markets for those, but once I find the markets, like how much do you stick your neck out? But at the same time, when I go to different conferences, I would love to try the alfalfa thing, but how much do you give up to try that in hopes that it maybe works? I would, a lot of guys are using, radishes are actually proven to be a pretty darn good cover type crop to put in that are super beneficial to your soils and what you can plant after those. And I would love to try something like that. I mean, I would love to go in and plant those dudes and,
You're talking about like dicot radish?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yep, big ones.
We use some specialty crops, so I don't know if you're talking about.
So yeah, I mean, I'd like to try different fertility programs and different specialty crops to really discover. Like, I think that we have a tendency as farmers to do what Grandpa did. And we have a tendency to do what, well, my neighbors, I have all neighbors tell me all the time, well, I tried that 10 years ago and it didn't work. Sweet, good for you, right? Yeah. So I think that we have to stay open-minded and
give her a shot.
Yeah.
I'm willing to watch the neighbors make a mistake.
But I think that we are, I think we need to be more open-minded, and I think that we can grow more. I just firmly believe that in Laramie County, we can grow more than, and I think we've proven that we can grow more than what we're currently growing. Like, it can be more than just wheat and fallow. But at the same time, I think, USDA and NOP has to understand that fallow is an extremely important part of what we do here. We can't just continuously crop everything organically every single year. Even the guys who chem fallow can't do that in this area.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
Yeah.
How about plant
Long
count?
answer, sorry.
What I'd like, honestly, I'd really like to be able to grow a deciduous orange grove. Not gonna happen unless we infuse some years. A deciduous orange grove would be awesome. If we're gonna jump off that one, got a question for you guys. Looking back, fathers, grandfathers, have you seen a decrease in the depth of tillage, horsepower requirement per foot of tillage piece you're dragging compared to what you're using now, to what fathers, grandfathers were using 20, 30, 40 years ago?
Does it take more horsepower to run the plow than it used to?
That and the depth we're working.
Yes.
Decrease.
Because
No, more horsepower. We're going deeper now than we used to.
That's weird.
really,
Better tires.
Yeah, like when I was in the early '80s, big tractors was 200 and some horsepower. So you put a 40-foot chisel on that, you can only go so deep. Now with these bigger tractors, you can go as deep as you want.
Oh, and you go deeper. You want to go deeper.
And well, there are times I do think it's good to go deeper.
And sometimes I feel that's something I'm doing that I shouldn't be. I'm going deeper, I'm plowing deeper.
Yep.
Shouldn't be doing.
And then there's times I think, yep, it's bit me in the, yep.
because I think it's because I'm further down the hill. We've gone from, here was a plow layer when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. We lived on a plow layer that deep.
Oh, okay, so you're way out.
We've gone from a 4 to 6 plow layer, when I say plow layer of disturbance dust mulch, to a 1.5 to 2 inch.
So strictly weed control.
Strictly weed control, and that breaks our capillary action for water savings, Some
More
people say
residue.
more residue.
And you
But I'm
might-
a bit coarse, I have a bit coarser texture soil than you guys, and it doesn't move.
Well, we're cutting into our break pretty strongly here, if you guys want. Thanks so much, you guys.